A black teacher tutors a racist white woman's child. She then complains to school board about him. The late afternoon sun streamed through the window of Jamie Taylor's home, casting a warm glow on the well-furnished living room filled with family photos and trophies. Alex Harper stepped inside, his heart racing as he took in the surroundings. This was not just another tutoring job. It was a chance to make a difference in a child's life, even if that child was the son of a woman known for her prejudiced views. "Come in, Mr. Harper," Jamie said, her tone a mix of formality and condescension. She gestured toward the couch, where her son, Ethan, sat with a stack of math books. Jamie's smile was polite but lacked warmth. "Ethan needs all the help he can get with his math. I hope you're up to the task." Alex forced a smile, pushing aside his discomfort. "Absolutely, Mrs. Taylor. I'm here to help Ethan succeed." He moved to the coffee table, placing his bag down. The air felt thick with an unspoken tension, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that Jamie was judging him, measuring his worth by the color of his skin rather than his qualifications. Ethan looked up, his blue eyes wide with uncertainty. "I don't understand fractions," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Alex's heart sank. He recognized the familiar signs of a child feeling overwhelmed. "Let's start there," Alex said, his voice steady. He knelt beside Ethan, opening the textbook. "Fractions can be tricky, but with a little practice, I know you'll get it." As Alex explained the concept, Jamie hovered in the background, her arms crossed tightly. She occasionally interjected with comments that felt more like criticisms. "Why are we using these methods? I've heard from other parents that the traditional way is better," she said, her tone sharp. Alex paused, his mind racing. Traditional methods? He knew what she meant. The kind of teaching that often left children like Ethan behind, struggling to keep up while their peers soared ahead. "I believe in adapting my methods to fit each student's needs," he replied, maintaining his professional demeanor. "Ethan learns differently, and that's okay." Jamie's lips tightened, but she said nothing more, at least for the moment. Alex turned his attention back to Ethan, who seemed to relax slightly. "Let's try some examples together," he suggested, working through problems with Ethan, who slowly began to grasp the concepts. As the session progressed, a small victory emerged. Ethan's confidence grew, and he started solving problems on his own, a smile breaking through his earlier uncertainty. "I get it now," he exclaimed, his excitement infectious. Alex felt a swell of pride. He loved these moments when he could see the light of understanding in a student's eyes. Just as they were about to tackle a more complex problem, Jamie's voice cut through the room. "Ethan, can you come here for a moment?" Her tone was sharp, almost demanding. Ethan looked up, eyes wide, and shuffled over to her, leaving Alex feeling momentarily abandoned. Alex sat back, watching as Jamie leaned down, her voice low but intense. "I heard you say you really like Mr. Harper's way of teaching. Are you sure you want to keep working with him?" Alex's stomach twisted. What was she implying? He could feel the tension in the room thicken as Ethan hesitated, glancing back at Alex. I mean, he helps me," Ethan stammered, clearly caught between his mother's expectations and his newfound understanding. "Just remember, you can always switch to someone else if you need to," Jamie said, her voice laced with an undertone of threat. Alex's heart sank at the implications. "Let's keep going, Ethan," Alex said, trying to steer the situation back to learning. "We were working on the next set of problems, right?" But Jamie's presence loomed large, and the flicker of pride he felt for Ethan dimmed. The session continued, but the shadow of Jamie's disapproval hung over them like a storm cloud, threatening to break at any moment. As the hour drew to a close, Alex packed away his materials, his mind racing. The tutoring session had gone better than he expected, but Jamie's attitude left him uneasy. He had faced challenges in his career before, but this felt different, more personal. "Thank you, Mr. Harper," Ethan said, his voice brightened. "I really think I can do better now." Alex smiled genuinely, a warmth spreading through him. "I believe in you, Ethan. Just keep practicing, and you'll be amazed at what you can achieve." As Alex stood to leave, Jamie stepped in front of him, blocking the exit. "I want to talk to you for a moment, Mr. Harper," she said, her voice cool and authoritative. "Of course," Alex replied, trying to maintain composure. What's on your mind? I just want to make sure that you're not teaching anything inappropriate. My son is impressionable, and I don't want any radical ideas being introduced into his education, Jamie said, her words dripping with disdain. Alex felt his pulse quicken. Radical ideas? He had simply been trying to teach Ethan in a way that resonated with him. I assure you I'm focused on the curriculum and what's best for Ethan's education, Alex replied, his voice steadying. Jamie's eyes narrowed. Just be careful. I have high expectations for my son's education, and I won't tolerate any nonsense. Alex took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Jamie's words. Understood. My only goal is to help Ethan thrive, he said, trying to keep the conversation professional despite the sting of her accusations. As he stepped around her, Alex felt a mix of frustration and determination. He knew he had the skills and passion to help Ethan, but he also realized he was up against more than just an overprotective parent. He was facing a mindset that had been entrenched for years. Walking back to his car, Alex reflected on the session. He had expected challenges, but Jamie's blatant prejudice felt like a barrier he wasn't sure he could break. How could he help Ethan while navigating Jamie's hostility? The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows as Alex drove home, his thoughts consumed by the complexities of his job. He could already envision the next tutoring session, wondering how much further he would have to go to reach Ethan, and whether Jamie would continue to obstruct his efforts. The following week, Alex arrived at Jamie's home earlier than usual, hoping to set a positive tone for the next tutoring session. As he parked in front of the well-kept house, he noticed the vibrant autumn leaves swirling in the breeze. He took a deep breath, mentally preparing himself for whatever Jamie might throw his way. Entering the house, he was greeted by the same bright, airy living room, but today it felt different. There was a tension in the air, a sense of anticipation that made Alex uneasy. He spotted Ethan at the dining table, immersed in his math book, but Jamie was nowhere in sight. "Hey, Ethan, ready to tackle some more fractions?" Alex asked, trying to inject enthusiasm into his voice. Ethan looked up, a smile breaking through his earlier apprehension. "Yeah, I want to get it right this time." He seemed more confident today, and Alex felt a glimmer of hope. As they began to work through the problems, Jamie strolled in, her expression unreadable. "It looks like you're making progress, Ethan," she remarked, her voice lacking the warmth Alex had hoped for. "But I want to make sure you're actually learning something useful." Alex's heart sank. Here we go again. "We're focusing on understanding the concepts, Mrs. Taylor. Once he grasps these foundational skills, we can move on to more complex problems." Jamie crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "I just want to ensure he's not falling behind. You know, there are parents talking about how tutors can sometimes introduce confusion instead of clarity." Alex clenched his jaw, feeling the sting of her words. "I assure you, my goal is to support Ethan's learning and help him build confidence." He glanced at Ethan, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes, and felt a surge of determination. "If you have concerns, I'm happy to discuss them, but I believe in Ethan's potential." Jamie's eyes narrowed slightly, and Alex could sense the challenge in her gaze. "I hope you realize that my son's future is at stake here. I've invested a lot in his education, and I expect results." "Of course, Mrs. Taylor," Alex replied, trying to maintain his composure. "But results come from understanding, not just rote memorization. I want Ethan to truly grasp these concepts, not just pass a test." The tension was palpable, but Alex refused to back down. He had seen too many students lose their love for learning due to pressure and parental expectations. "Let's get started, Ethan," he said, redirecting the focus back to the task at hand. As they worked through several problems, Alex noticed Ethan's confidence growing. With each correct answer, the boy's face lit up, and Alex felt a sense of pride swell within him. It was moments like these that made his job worthwhile. But Jamie remained a silent observer, her expression inscrutable. After a particularly tough problem, Ethan managed to solve it on his own, and his eyes sparkled with excitement. "I did it! I really did it!" he exclaimed, beaming at Alex. "That's fantastic, Ethan," Alex replied, clapping his hands together. "You're really getting the hang of this. I'm proud of you." Yet just as the atmosphere began to relax, Jamie's voice cut in, cold and sharp. "That's great, Ethan, but let's not get too carried away. Remember, we need to keep our feet on the ground. Mom, I'm really trying, Ethan said, his voice wavering slightly. Mr. Harper is helping me. Alex felt a pang of sympathy for Ethan. The boy was caught between his desire to please his mother and his need for encouragement. It's okay, Ethan. Every step counts, and you should feel proud of your progress, Alex reassured him. Jamie's expression darkened, but before she could respond, the front doorbell rang, interrupting the tension. I'll get it, she said, her voice tight. As she walked away, Alex turned to Ethan. Hey, you're doing great. Just keep believing in yourself, okay? Alex encouraged, hoping to reinforce the boy's newfound confidence. Ethan nodded, though the shadow of his mother's expectations loomed large. Thanks, Mr. Harper. I really like learning with you. A moment later, Jamie returned, flanked by another parent, a woman Alex recognized from the school's PTA meetings. This is Lisa, Jamie announced, her tone brighter, as if to mask the earlier tension. She's been concerned about some of the teaching methods used in the school. Alex's stomach dropped. What was this? He could feel the weight of the situation shift, the air thickening with unspoken implications. Hi, Alex, Lisa said, her smile friendly but cautious. Jamie and I were just discussing some of the challenges kids are facing in school. I think it's important we all stay informed about what's going on. Absolutely, Alex replied, forcing a smile. I'm here to help Ethan and all my students succeed. I believe in meeting each child where they are. Of course, Jamie interjected, her tone slightly defensive. But we need to ensure that all methods are appropriate. We wouldn't want any of our kids getting mixed messages. Alex felt a surge of frustration. Mixed messages? He had been teaching for years, and he had always prioritized clear and constructive communication. I focus on creating a supportive environment for learning, he reiterated, his voice steady. Ethan is doing wonderfully, and I want to keep that momentum going. Lisa nodded, clearly trying to keep the peace. That's great to hear, Alex. We just want to make sure that all students are thriving and that parents feel comfortable with their children's education. Of course, Jamie said, her tone sharper now. And as I mentioned, I have my concerns about the direction things are going. We need to ensure our kids are prepared for the future, without any distractions. Alex took a deep breath, feeling the pressure mounting. I understand, but I assure you that my focus is entirely on helping Ethan grasp the necessary skills to succeed in school and beyond. Ethan sat quietly, observing the adults, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. Alex felt a pang of empathy for the boy, who was caught in the crossfire of a battle that had nothing to do with him. As the conversation veered back into Jamie's concerns about the school curriculum, Alex realized that this was more than just a disagreement about teaching methods. It was a clash of values, a struggle for control, and a reflection of deeper societal issues. With every passing moment, he felt the walls closing in, and he knew that this was just the beginning of the challenges he would face in his attempts to support Ethan. The stakes were higher than he had anticipated, and he was determined to stand his ground, not just for himself, but for the sake of the child who needed him most. The tension in Jamie's living room hung like a thick fog, suffocating and oppressive. Alex felt the weight of Jamie's scrutiny as he tried to maintain his composure. Lisa, the other parent, shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing the friction between them. Let's focus on Ethan's progress, Alex suggested, trying to steer the conversation back to the child. He's made significant strides in understanding fractions, and I believe he can continue to improve with consistent practice. Jamie's expression hardened. That's all well and good, but I want to ensure that he's not just learning how to pass tests. I want him to be prepared for the real world. Her voice dripped with condescension, as if she believed Alex's methods were inadequate. Preparation for the real world includes critical thinking and problem-solving skills, Alex replied, his voice steady despite the rising tension. I'm teaching Ethan to approach problems from different angles, which is essential for his development. Is that so? He said, Jamie shot back, her tone laced with skepticism. I've heard from other parents that some tutors focus too much on creativity and not enough on the basics. We can't afford to let our kids fall behind. Alex felt a surge of frustration. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about Jamie's need for control. I assure you, Mrs. Taylor, I'm not neglecting the basics. I'm integrating them into our sessions in a way that resonates with Ethan's learning style. Ethan sat quietly, his eyes darting between the adults, clearly uncomfortable with the escalating confrontation. "Mom, I really like how Mr. Harper teaches me," he finally said, his voice small but firm. I understand things better now." Jamie's gaze snapped to her son, her expression a mix of disbelief and irritation. "Ethan, you need to listen to me. I'm only looking out for your best interest." "Mom, I know you are," Ethan replied, his voice gaining strength. "But I want to keep learning with Mr. Harper. He makes it fun." Alex felt a flicker of hope at Ethan's words, but Jamie's reaction was immediate. "Fun doesn't always mean effective, Ethan. You need to take your education seriously." "Education can be effective and fun," Alex interjected, his voice rising slightly. "When students are engaged, they learn better. That's a proven fact." Jamie's eyes narrowed, and Alex could see the gears turning in her mind. "I think it's time we reevaluate this arrangement," she said, her tone icy. "I'm not sure you're the right fit for my son." Alex's heart sank. This was the moment he had dreaded. "Mrs. Taylor, I understand your concerns, but I believe in Ethan's potential. He's shown remarkable progress, and I want to continue supporting him. Support is one thing, but I won't have my son influenced by someone who doesn't share our values." Jamie shot back, her voice rising. "I've heard things about your teaching methods that make me uncomfortable." "Things?" Alex echoed, incredulous. "What things? If you have specific concerns, I'd be happy to address them directly." Jamie crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "I've heard that you promote ideas that are unconventional, ideas that don't align with what I want for my son." Alex felt a rush of anger. Unconventional? He had always strived to teach inclusively, to encourage critical thinking and empathy. "I'm not promoting anything other than a love for learning and respect for all perspectives," he replied, his voice firm. "If that makes you uncomfortable, then perhaps we need to have a deeper conversation about what education truly means." Ethan looked between them, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Mom, I just want to learn," he said softly, his voice trembling. "Mr. Harper helps me." Jamie's gaze softened momentarily as she looked at her son, but the hardness returned quickly. "Ethan, I'm your mother. I know what's best for you." "Mom, please," Ethan pleaded, his voice rising. "I want to keep working with Mr. Harper. He believes in me." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Alex felt a surge of pride for Ethan, who was finally standing up for himself. But Jamie's expression was a storm cloud, dark and foreboding. "Fine," Jamie said, her voice low and dangerous. "But I will be watching closely. If I see any signs that this is affecting Ethan negatively, I won't hesitate to take action." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of her threat. "I understand, Mrs. Taylor. I want what's best for Ethan too, but I hope you can trust me to do my job." As the session came to a close, Alex packed his materials, his mind racing. He had entered this tutoring arrangement with the hope of making a positive impact, but now he felt like he was walking a tightrope, balancing between Jamie's expectations and Ethan's needs. "Thank you for today, Mr. Harper," Ethan said, his voice brightening as he stood up. "I really learned a lot." "Great job today, Ethan. Keep practicing, and I'll see you next week," Alex replied, forcing a smile despite the turmoil inside him. As he walked to the door, Jamie's voice stopped him. "I expect you to keep me updated on Ethan's progress. I want to know exactly what you're teaching him." "Of course," Alex said, trying to keep his tone neutral. "I'll send you a summary of our sessions and the topics we cover." "Good," Jamie replied, her expression still guarded. "I'll be expecting it." Stepping outside, Alex took a deep breath, the cool air hitting his face like a splash of cold water. He felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He had managed to hold his ground, but the battle was far from over. Jamie's influence loomed large, and he knew that the next session would be just as challenging. Driving home, Alex reflected on the day's events. He had always believed in the power of education to bridge divides, but Jamie's hostility was a stark reminder of the obstacles he faced. He couldn't let her prejudice dictate how he taught Ethan. As he pulled into his driveway, Alex resolved to find a way to connect with Ethan more deeply, to help him see the value of learning beyond the confines of his mother's expectations. He would not only be a tutor, but also a mentor, someone who could inspire Ethan to think critically and embrace his own potential. The following week, as Alex prepared for the next tutoring session, He decided to incorporate more engaging activities that would resonate with Ethan's interests. He wanted to create an environment where Ethan felt safe to express himself, free from the weight of his mother's expectations. When he arrived at Jamie's house, he was determined to make this session different. He greeted Ethan with a smile, ready to dive into a new approach. "Today we're going to do something a little different," he said, pulling out a set of colorful math games. "I thought we could make learning fun." Ethan's eyes lit up with excitement. "Really? That sounds awesome." As they began to play, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was not just teaching math, he was building a relationship, fostering a love for learning that could withstand the pressures from outside. But as the session progressed, he couldn't shake the feeling that Jamie was watching, waiting for any misstep. He knew he had to tread carefully, but for the first time, he felt hopeful. Ethan was engaged, laughing and learning, and Alex was determined to keep that spark alive, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The following week, Alex arrived at Jamie's house with a renewed sense of purpose. He had spent the last few days reflecting on his approach, determined to create a more engaging and supportive environment for Ethan. As he parked his car, he glanced at the vibrant autumn leaves swirling in the breeze, a reminder that change was possible. Stepping inside, he was greeted by the familiar sight of Jamie's well-decorated living room. Ethan was already at the dining table, his math book open, but Jamie was nowhere in sight. Alex felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps today would be different. "Hey, Ethan, ready to dive into some math?" Alex asked, his voice bright and encouraging. Ethan looked up, his face lighting up. "Yeah, I've been practicing the fractions we worked on last time." "That's great to hear," Alex replied, feeling a swell of pride. "Let's see how much you've learned." As they began to work through the problems, Alex noticed Ethan's confidence growing. The boy tackled each question with increasing enthusiasm, and Alex felt a sense of accomplishment. This was what teaching was all about, helping a child discover their potential. Just as they were getting into a rhythm, Jamie entered the room, her expression unreadable. "I hope you're not spending too much time on those games," she said, her tone sharp. "Ethan needs to focus on the curriculum." Alex's heart sank. Here we go again. "Actually, Mrs. Taylor, we're working on applying the concepts through engaging activities. It helps reinforce what he's learning," he explained, trying to keep his voice steady. Jamie crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "Engaging activities are fine, but they shouldn't replace the fundamentals. I want to make sure Ethan is prepared for the real world." "Preparation for the real world includes critical thinking and problem-solving skills," Alex replied, feeling the tension rise. "When students are engaged, they learn better. That's a proven fact." Jamie's eyes narrowed, and Alex could see the challenge in her gaze. "I think it's time we reevaluate this arrangement," she said, her voice icy. "I'm not sure you're the right fit for my son." Alex's heart sank. This was the moment he had dreaded. "Mrs. Taylor, I understand your concerns, but I believe in Ethan's potential. He's shown remarkable progress, and I want to continue supporting him." "Support is one thing, but I won't have my son influenced by someone who doesn't share our values," Jamie shot back, her voice rising. "I've heard things about your teaching methods that make me uncomfortable." "Things?" Alex echoed, incredulous. "What things? If you have specific concerns, I'd be happy to address them directly." Jamie crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "I've heard that you promote ideas that are unconventional, ideas that don't align with what I want for my son." Alex felt a rush of anger. Unconventional, he had always strived to teach inclusively, to encourage critical thinking and empathy. "I'm not promoting anything other than a love for learning and respect for all perspectives," he replied, his voice firm. "If that makes you uncomfortable, then perhaps we need to have a deeper conversation about what education truly means." Ethan looked between them, his eyes wide with confusion. "Mom, I just wanted to learn," he said softly, his voice trembling. "Mr. Harper helps me." Jamie's gaze softened momentarily as she looked at her son, but the hardness returned quickly. "Ethan, I'm your mother. I know what's best for you." "Mom, please," Ethan pleaded, his voice rising. "I want to keep working with Mr. Harper. He makes it fun." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Alex felt a surge of pride for Ethan, who was finally standing up for himself. But Jamie's expression was a storm cloud. dark and foreboding. "Fine," Jamie said, her voice low and dangerous. "But I will be watching closely. If I see any signs that this is affecting Ethan negatively, I won't hesitate to take action." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of her threat. "I understand, Mrs. Taylor. I want what's best for Ethan too, but I hope you can trust me to do my job." As the session came to a close, Alex packed his materials, his mind racing. He had entered this tutoring arrangement with the hope of making a positive impact, but now he felt like he was walking a tightrope, balancing between Jamie's expectations and Ethan's needs. "Thank you for today, Mr. Harper," Ethan said, his voice brightening as he stood up. "I really learned a lot." "Great job today, Ethan. Keep practicing, and I'll see you next week," Alex replied, forcing a smile despite the turmoil inside him. As he walked to the door, Jamie's voice stopped him. "I expect you to keep me updated on Ethan's progress. I want to know exactly what you're teaching him." "Of course," Alex said, trying to keep his tone neutral. "I'll send you a summary of our sessions and the topics we cover." "Good," Jamie replied, her expression still guarded. "I'll be expecting it." Stepping outside, Alex took a deep breath, the cool air hitting his face like a splash of cold water. He felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He had managed to hold his ground, but the battle was far from over. Jamie's influence loomed large, and he knew that the next session would be just as challenging. Driving home, Alex reflected on the day's events. He had always believed in the power of education to bridge divides, but Jamie's hostility was a stark reminder of the obstacles he faced. He couldn't let her prejudice dictate how he taught Ethan. As he pulled into his driveway, Alex resolved to find a way to connect with Ethan more deeply, to help him see the value of learning beyond the confines of his mother's expectations. He would not only be a tutor, but also a mentor, someone who could inspire Ethan to think critically and embrace his own potential. The following week, as Alex prepared for the next tutoring session, he decided to incorporate more engaging activities that would resonate with Ethan's interests. He wanted to create an environment where Ethan felt safe to express himself, free from the weight of his mother's expectations. When he arrived at Jamie's house, he was determined to make this session different. He greeted Ethan with a smile, ready to dive into a new approach. "Today we're going to do something a little different," he said, pulling out a set of colorful math games. "I thought we could make learning fun." Ethan's eyes lit up with excitement. "Really? That sounds awesome." As they began to play, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was not just teaching math, he was building a relationship, fostering a love for learning that could withstand the pressures from outside. But as the session progressed, he couldn't shake the feeling that Jamie was watching, waiting for any misstep. He knew he had to tread carefully, but for the first time, he felt hopeful. Ethan was engaged, laughing and learning, and Alex was determined to keep that spark alive, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The crisp air of late autumn carried a chill as Alex walked towards the imposing brick building of the school district office. The summons to appear before the school board had arrived like a dark omen, confirming his worst fears. Jamie Taylor had escalated her complaints, and now his career hung precariously in the balance. He pushed open the heavy oak doors, the sound echoing in the cavernous hallway. The sterile environment, with its beige walls and fluorescent lighting, amplified his unease. He could feel the weight of Jamie's accusations pressing down on him, a tangible force threatening to suffocate his passion for teaching. He found the designated meeting room and entered, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was filled with stern-faced board members, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Jamie sat at the far end of the table, her posture rigid, a smug satisfaction playing on her lips. Ethan sat beside her, looking small and lost in the formal setting. Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He had prepared a presentation outlining his teaching methods and Ethan's progress, but facing Jamie's unwavering hostility felt like an uphill battle. "Mr. Harper," began the board president, a stern-looking woman with steel-gray hair, "we've received a formal complaint from Mrs. Taylor regarding your teaching practices. We're here to understand the situation and determine the appropriate course of action." Alex nodded, his throat dry. "Thank you for the opportunity to address these concerns. I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my approach to teaching Ethan." He launched into his presentation, highlighting Ethan's improved understanding of fractions and his growing confidence in tackling complex problems. He emphasized his commitment to adapting his methods to meet each student's unique learning style, showcasing examples of Ethan's work and positive feedback from other parents. Throughout his presentation, Jamie sat impassively, her arms crossed tightly. Occasionally, she would whisper something to Ethan, who would shrink further into his chair. Alex could feel her disapproval radiating across the room, a palpable force undermining his efforts. When he finished, the board president addressed Jamie. "Mrs. Taylor, we've heard Mr. Harper's side of the story. Would you like to share your perspective?" Jamie straightened in her chair, her voice laced with righteous indignation. "Mr. Harper's methods are unconventional and inappropriate. He's filling my son's head with ideas that don't align with our family values. He's undermining my authority as a parent." Alex felt a surge of anger. Family values? He had simply been trying to foster a love of learning in Ethan, to encourage him to think critically and embrace his own potential. He had never tried to impose any particular ideology on the boy. "Mrs. Taylor," he interjected, his voice rising slightly, "I respect your right to be involved in your son's education, but I haven't introduced anything inappropriate into our sessions. My focus has been solely on helping Ethan succeed academically." "Succeed academically?" Jamie scoffed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "By playing games and telling stories? That's not how real learning happens. My son needs discipline and structure, not frivolous activities." Alex felt his frustration mounting. He had tried to explain his methods, to demonstrate their effectiveness, but Jamie's prejudice seemed impenetrable. He could see the doubt creeping into the faces of some board members, their expressions reflecting the insidious power of Jamie's accusations. "I believe in creating a positive learning environment where students feel comfortable taking risks and exploring new ideas," Alex explained, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "Ethan thrives in this kind of setting, and his progress speaks for itself." "Progress," Jamie countered, her voice rising. "He's only making progress because I'm constantly reinforcing the basics at home. If it were up to Mr. Harper, he'd be lost in a world of make-believe." Alex clenched his jaw, fighting to maintain his composure. He could see Ethan squirming in his chair, caught in the crossfire of their arguments. He had to find a way to break through Jamie's prejudice, to show the board that he was a dedicated educator, not a threat to her son's well-being. "Mrs. Taylor," he said, his voice firm, "I understand your concerns, but I believe in Ethan's potential. He's a bright and capable student, and I'm committed to helping him reach his full potential." "Potential?" Jamie scoffed. "He'll reach his full potential when he learns to respect authority and follow the rules. Mr. Harper's methods are undermining his respect for tradition and discipline." Alex took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. He knew that arguing with Jamie wouldn't change her mind. He needed to appeal to the board members, to show them that he was a dedicated educator who cared deeply about his students. "I believe in fostering a love of learning in all my students," he said, his voice resonating with sincerity. "I want them to be critical thinkers, problem solvers, and compassionate individuals. That's what education is truly about." The board members exchanged glances, their expressions thoughtful. Alex could sense a shift in the atmosphere, a glimmer of hope that his words were finally getting through. He glanced at Ethan, who was watching him with a mixture of admiration and anxiety. He knew he had to fight for this boy, for his future, and for his own integrity as a teacher. The board president cleared her throat. "We appreciate both your perspectives. We'll take some time to deliberate and reach a decision." As Alex gathered his materials, he felt a mix of exhaustion and uncertainty. He had done everything he could to defend himself, but the outcome remained uncertain. He glanced at Jamie, who was whispering something to Ethan, her expression triumphant. He knew this wasn't over yet. Leaving the meeting room, Alex stepped out into the cool autumn air, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He looked up at the clear sky, a sliver of moon visible in the fading daylight. He needed to find strength to prepare himself for whatever lay ahead. He wouldn't give up on Ethan, not now, not ever. The days following the school board meeting felt like a blur of anxiety and uncertainty for Alex. Each moment weighed heavily on his mind, and he could hardly focus on his classes. The knowledge that Jamie Taylor held the power to dictate his future gnawed at him, leaving him restless and on edge. Finally, the day arrived when the board would announce its decision. Alex walked into the building feeling a mixture of dread and determination. He had made his case, and now it was out of his hands. As he approached the meeting room, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he had worked for was on the line. Inside, the board members were seated, their expressions serious. Jamie sat at the side, her demeanor smug, and Alex felt a surge of anger. She was enjoying this too much. He took a deep breath, trying to center himself as the board president called the meeting to order. "Thank you for your patience during our deliberation," the board president began. "We've considered the complaints brought forth by Mrs. Taylor against Mr. Harper and have come to a decision regarding the matter." Alex's heart raced. He exchanged glances with Ethan, who sat beside Jamie, his face a mask of apprehension. The tension in the room was palpable, and Alex could feel the weight of their scrutiny. "Mr. Harper," the president continued, "we acknowledge that you have made efforts to connect with your students and adapt your teaching methods to meet their needs. However, the board takes the concerns of parents seriously, especially when it comes to the education of their children." Jamie leaned forward, a satisfied smirk on her face. "Thank you for recognizing the importance of parental input," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "However," the president continued, "we also value the integrity of our educators and their right to teach in a manner they believe is effective. Therefore, we will not be taking any disciplinary action against Mr. Harper." A wave of relief washed over Alex, but it was quickly overshadowed by Jamie's outraged response. "You can't be serious. This is unacceptable. He's clearly not fit to teach my son." "Mrs. Taylor," the president interjected, her voice firm, "we suggest you focus on supporting your son's education rather than undermining his teachers. We encourage you to have an open dialogue with Mr. Harper moving forward." Jamie's face flushed with anger, but Alex felt a sense of vindication. He had stood his ground, and the board had backed him. Still, he knew this wasn't the end of the battle. Jamie would not let this go easily. As the meeting adjourned, Alex approached Ethan, who was standing quietly beside Jamie. "I'm proud of you, Ethan," he said, kneeling down to the boy's level. "You've shown a lot of courage." Ethan looked up, his expression a mix of relief and uncertainty. "I just want to learn, Mr. Harper. I don't want it to disappoint my mom." "You're not disappointing anyone by wanting to learn," Alex reassured him. "Learning comes in many forms, and what you're doing is important." Jamie stepped forward, her voice cold. "Ethan, it's time to go. We have a lot to discuss." She shot a glare at Alex, her displeasure evident. "I won't let this go, Mr. Harper. You'll regret this." Alex stood tall, refusing to back down. "I'm not going anywhere, Mrs. Taylor. I'm here for Ethan, and I will continue to support him, regardless of your opinions." As Jamie led Ethan away, Alex felt a surge of determination. He had faced Jamie's hostility and emerged victorious, but he knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Jamie was not the type to simply accept defeat. She would find another way to undermine him. That evening, as Alex sat at his kitchen table, he reflected on the day's events. He was grateful for the board's support, but knew he had to remain vigilant. He couldn't let Jamie's prejudice dictate how he taught or how he connected with his students. In the days that followed, Alex focused on building a stronger relationship with Ethan. He developed lesson plans that were not only educational, but also engaging, incorporating games and activities that would capture Ethan's interest. He wanted to create an environment where the boy felt empowered to learn, free from the weight of his mother's expectations. As they worked together, Alex noticed a marked change in Ethan. The boy's confidence blossomed as he tackled problems with enthusiasm. He began to share ideas and ask questions, no longer hesitant to express himself. Each session felt like a small victory, and Alex couldn't help but feel proud of the progress they were making together. But Jamie was always lurking in the background. She continued to drop subtle hints during drop-off and pickup, her disapproval evident in her icy demeanor. Alex could feel the tension building, but he refused to let it affect his work with Ethan. One afternoon, as they wrapped up a particularly successful session, Ethan looked up at Alex, his eyes shining with excitement. "Mr. Harper, can we do a project? I want to show my mom how much I'm learning." Alex's heart swelled at the idea. "Absolutely, Ethan. What do you want to focus on?" Ethan thought for a moment, then said, "Can we do something about fractions? I want to make it fun and show her how cool it can be." "That sounds like a fantastic idea," Alex replied, feeling a rush of inspiration. "Let's come up with a project that really highlights what you've learned." As they brainstormed, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer just fighting against Jamie's prejudice. He was building something positive with Ethan, a foundation of trust and learning that could withstand any challenge. But in the back of his mind, he knew that Jamie would not take this lying down. The confrontation was inevitable, and when it came, he had to be ready. The following week, Alex walked into Jamie Taylor's home with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Today was the day Ethan would present his project on fractions, an interactive display that showcased not only what he had learned, but also his newfound enthusiasm for math. Alex had encouraged Ethan to include elements that would appeal to his mother, hoping to bridge the gap between them. Ethan was already at the dining table, surrounded by colorful posters and fraction manipulatives. "I can't wait for Mom to see this," he exclaimed, his eyes bright with anticipation. "Me too. You've worked really hard, and I'm proud of you," Alex replied, a smile spreading across his face. "This is going to show her just how capable you are." Just then, Jamie walked in, her expression unreadable. "What's all this?" she asked, her tone skeptical as she surveyed the colorful materials spread out before her. "Mom, look," Ethan said excitedly, gesturing toward the display. "Mr. Harper helped me make this project to show you how fractions work. We're going to demonstrate it together." Jamie's brow furrowed, and Alex could see the wheels turning in her mind. "I'm not sure I like the idea of you doing a project with him," she said, her voice edged with disapproval. "What if it's just more of his games?" "Mom, please," Ethan pleaded. "I really understand this now, and I want to show you it's not just games, it's learning." Alex stepped forward, trying to diffuse the tension. "Mrs. Taylor, I assure you that this project is designed to reinforce Ethan's understanding of fractions in a way that's engaging and educational. It's a combination of fun and learning, and I believe it will help him show you his progress." Jamie crossed her arms, her expression skeptical, but Alex could see a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "Fine," she said, her tone begrudging. "Let's see what you've got." Ethan beamed with excitement as he began his presentation, explaining each part of the project with growing confidence. He used visuals, engaged Jamie with questions, and even demonstrated how to solve a few fraction problems using his manipulatives. Throughout the presentation, Alex remained close by, offering support and encouragement. As Ethan explained the concept of fractions using pizza slices and pie charts, Alex noticed Jamie's expression begin to shift. The initial skepticism in her eyes softened as she watched her son's enthusiasm grow. For the first time, she seemed to see Ethan not just as a child struggling with math, but as a capable learner who had made real progress. "See, Mom, it's really fun to understand fractions," Ethan said, his voice filled with pride. "And I can use them in real life, like when we bake cookies or share pizza." Alex couldn't help but smile as Ethan's passion shone through. Jamie remained quiet, but her arms had unwound from their defensive position, and a hint of admiration flickered across her face. "Okay, I admit," she said slowly, her voice softer than before. "Maybe I've been too harsh. I can see you've put a lot of effort into this, Ethan." Ethan's eyes sparkled with hope. "So you think I'm learning?" "Yes, you are," Jamie replied, her tone shifting. "And I appreciate Mr. Harper's help." Alex felt a surge of relief wash over him. This was the breakthrough he had hoped for, a moment of connection between mother and son, forged in the fires of understanding and respect. "Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. I believe that with continued support, Ethan will thrive." As the session wrapped up, Ethan's excitement filled the room. "Can we do more projects like this, Mr. Harper? It makes learning so much better." "Absolutely," Alex replied, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Learning should always be fun, and I'm here to help you discover all the amazing things you can achieve." Jamie watched her son with a newfound appreciation, and Alex could see the shift in her demeanor. "I'm sorry I doubted you, Mr. Harper," she said, her voice sincere. "I realize now that I need to trust Ethan's judgment and the educators he learns from." "Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. I truly appreciate your understanding," Alex replied, feeling a warmth in his chest. "Together, we can help Ethan reach his full potential." With that, the atmosphere in the room transformed. Jamie was no longer an antagonist. She had become an ally, invested in her son's education and progress. Alex felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing that he had not only helped Ethan, but also opened a channel of communication between Jamie and himself. As he left the Taylor home that day, Alex felt a renewed sense of hope. He had faced challenges, but he had emerged victorious, not just for himself, but for Ethan, who now thrived in a supportive environment. The road ahead would still have its obstacles, but Alex knew he was prepared to navigate them, armed with the belief that education could change lives. You've made it to the end. If you enjoyed this story, I am confident that you'll love the next one appearing on the screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and please give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one.